This video looks at how to graph quadratic equations. So we are going to look at the problem y equals negative x squared plus 4x minus 1. So the first thing we want to do is notice whether or not our parabola will be opening upward or downward. So to figure that out, we can look at our coefficients. We probably should get those written out. So a equals negative 1, and then b equals 4, and c equals negative 1. Now, to tell whether or not your parabola will open upward or downward, you want to look at a, and in this case a is negative 1, so that means our parabola will open downward, so it will look like this. So our answer to our first question is our parabola will open downward. Next thing you want to do is complete the table. So we could do that by plugging in each of the numbers that we see here. So we could plug in negative 1 into the equation and get y, and then 0, 1, and so on. But when you're going to plug in that many numbers, it's definitely easier just to go ahead and enter it into our calculator. So let's go to our calculator and go to y equals, and let's go ahead and clear out whatever we have there and enter negative x squared, and make sure you're using this negative key. If you use subtraction, either you'll get an error or it won't graph correctly. And then plus 4x minus 1. And then we can try zoom 6 to see if we see it. And we do. So we can tell from here it opens downward. So either, again, you can look at the coefficient of a, or you can go ahead and graph it. To do our table, we can go to second table set, and this table starting at negative 1. If you had to figure it out on your own, you could go back to the graph and see where the values are here. So we're looking at maybe negative 4, negative 3, if there wasn't any x values given to you. So let's go to second table set, and you can start at 0, or since we know our table starts at negative 1, we can do that. And we saw that was going in increments of 1. And then we can go to second table, and then we have our values. So again, we're looking for negative 1 through 5. So we can go ahead and write that out. So negative 1, and then y is negative 6, 0, negative 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 4, negative 1, and 5, negative 6. And sometimes this can give us additional useful information. So we have that. So we've completed our table, and let's scroll down to see what's next. So next we want to find the vertex, and there's two ways to do that. Now remember, the vertex, we start with x equals negative b over 2a, and the vertex, when you're graphing, if it's downward, the vertex is the maximum. If it's the other direction, if it's opening upward, then it's the minimum. So this one would be the maximum, or we could use x equals negative b over 2a. So we have a negative, and we put in 4 for b, over 2 times negative 1. So we have negative 4 over negative 2, or 2. And then to find the y coordinate, we're just going to plug that in. So we have negative, and then we're going to plug in 2 and square it, plus 4 times 2 minus 1. So we have negative 4 plus 8 minus 1. So we get y equals 3. So our vertex is 2, 3. So the other way we could do it is, again, to find the maximum. So second calc, and then maximum, and we should get a little closer to what we're looking for. So we want to make sure we're on the left side of this, and we are. Hit enter, and then you want to get on the right side of it, So now we're on the right side of the point we're looking for and hit enter. And then the guess, and we're going to hit enter. And this could go ahead and be rounded to 2, so our answer is 2 comma 3. So there's 2 ways to find the vertex. And then we next look at our list here, and we're going to find the x-intercepts. So to find the x-intercepts, what we want to do is look at our screen, which I've already started here. So what we want to do is set our equation equal to 0. Okay, so that's this first line here. So what I did was I set our equation equal to 0. And then the second line here is what I try to do is I try to factor it. So we like our first term to be positive, so I factored out a -1, and then I looked at it, I had x squared minus 4x plus 1, and I realized I couldn't factor it. When you can't factor an equation, then you need to go ahead and use the quadratic formula. So I have it written here, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, and then it's divided by 2a. Then what I did was I substituted in my a, b, and c. So I have -4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times -1 times -1 all over 2 times -1. And then I simplified it one step further, and you can see I have -4 plus or minus the square root of 12 over -2. Now, because there's a plus or minus here, I write it again with a plus right here, and then I write it again with a negative. Now we could simplify the radical 12 and end up with 2 radical 3, but since we're putting in our calculator, it isn't necessary. Now, next step shows that, what the results after putting in the calculator. What I did is I put the numerator in, the -4 plus square root of 12. I hit enter, and then I divided by -2. And I came up with 0.27, and that's rounded. So the question is, what do I round to? Well, remember that we're going to plot these points. So you don't want too many decimal places, otherwise it makes it difficult to plot. So even 0.27 might be too much, and you can go ahead and round to 0.3. Then I did it again with the second x, and I ended up with 3.373, and again I would round that to 3.7. So remember that we're finding zeros. So what we want to do is go to second calc and then find 0, and let's go ahead and do the first point. So the left bound means to get on the left side of the value you're looking for. So we're looking for when it crosses the x-axis. So we're going to hit enter, and then we're going to get on the right side or above the x-axis and hit enter again. And you can see we have the 0.267, which is 0.3. Then we do it again for the other one. So look for the 0, and this time we're going to be above the x-axis to be on the left side, and then enter, and then get on the right side, and then enter, and again we can see the 3.73, which is rounded to 3.7. So these are our x-intercepts. Sometimes we can see them on our table, but at this point we don't see those. So we have our vertex, our x-intercepts, and then if we look, the last thing we need is our y-intercept. So at this point you may notice already that we have it right here. When x is 0, y is -1. If you didn't see that, we can go to y-intercept, and all we're doing is plugging in 0 for x. So we get y equals -1. So we see here that our y-intercept is 0, -1. The last one we can do is use our calculator. So we can do this anytime we want to do a calculation. We go to second calc, and we're looking for the value. So we can let x equal anything. In this case, we want it to be 0, and hit enter, and it calculates it, 0, -1. So if the numbers are integers, then we could just pick them off the table. But if not, this is how we would go ahead and find it. So then the last thing we want to do is go ahead and graph our um, parabola. So here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. So we're just going to do 5s with this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4, negative 5. So we can start by graphing our vertex, which is 2, 1, 2, 3. So this is our 2 comma negative 3. And then we have our x-intercepts. So that is at 0.3 and 1, 2, 3, about 3.7. And then our y vertex is 0 comma negative 1. So those are the points that we need here. So then we just connect it, and it shouldn't have a point, it should be kind of rounded. And then your parabola should look like this one. And if you wanted to plot a couple extra points to make it a little bit smoother, that's fine, but you need to plot the vertex, the x-intercepts, and the y-intercepts.